Thank you for joining us for the online services of Souls Harbor Assembly, located in Bardstown, Kentucky. Real people, real life, real faith, real God. If you have prayer requests or prayer needs, please email us prayer@soulsharbораssembly.org. And now, Pastor Jonathan Watson, Senior Pastor of Souls Harbor Assembly in Bardstown, Kentucky.
I appreciate each of you being here this morning. You know what? In 6,000 years of the earth's existence, never has there ever been a price worthy to be paid for the price of sin. Never, except for Christ. You know, Jesus, God's only Son, He left the comfort, He left the security, if you will, of heaven. He stepped down into our world, into our mess, and he set the captives free through His death and resurrection. I was thinking about this in the light of preparation for this message today. And the other night, my wife and I, we were watching NBC's Chicago Fire. It's a great little show, and for the most part, it's pretty clean. But this particular show that we were watching, in season 5, episode 18, I believe, Lieutenant Matt Casey, he discovers a new crack house right down the road from the firehouse. Through the course of the show, we discover that there is a particular young lady who has taken up residence at this crack house. She's, for lack of a better word, she's held hostage due to her addictions, due to the mess that she finds herself in. Towards the end of the show, Matt Casey and the rest of the firefighters, they bust in the doors and they extract this young lady. As the very last scene that we see here as the show comes to a conclude is Matt Casey and the team taking extreme measures to remedy the situation that this young lady is in. After all, she is in a hell of sorts, right? So they have penetrated her existence. They've penetrated her hell, and they have reunited Amanda with her parents, who have missed her and who love her and who have tried to reach out to her in the best way that they know how. And so as the closing scene, Amanda and her mom are seen holding each other, hugging each other, crying tears of joy because they've been reunited. You know, as I think about that story in light of Easter, that's exactly what happened with Christ in us. He saw us in our very extreme situation. He stepped down into the world to remedy the situation, and He has provided a way in which we could be reunited with His Father. He has taken on that role, if you will, and He has left the safety of His home. He's gone out and found those in misery, us, and He's offered to rescue us from a miserable eternity. This morning, as we pause for just a moment, we're going to move into a time of worship. I want to say thank you to Devin Williams as he has graciously joined us now for the last 4 weeks, and he has helped us connect with God on the levels of worship. I would encourage anybody, if you've not heard him before, to either go back into our YouTube messages, and we have some worship from him there, or you can check him out on his website at www.devinw.com. Again, that's devinw.com. Join us as we turn our hearts and our minds upon God the Father, who loves us so much.
Holy and true are your ways, Lord, we are here to touch your face. Fill up this room like a flood. Shower your grace and pour out your love on me. Into your your hands I commit my spirit, and I live my life for you, 'cause you gave your life for me, and that's your feet I bow and worship, 'cause you are the one I love, and you are the one I need. Into your hands I commit my spirit, and I live my life for you, 'cause you gave your life for me, and that's your feet I bow and worship, 'cause you are the one I love, and you are the one I need. You are the one I love, and you are the one I need. You are the one I love, and you are the one I need.
I know that nobody likes to talk about money at church, and I don't either. So I'm not going to make it a big emphasis this morning. An offering, though. How do we offer our lives to the Lord? This morning, I was reading through the beginning chapters of 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel 1 and 2. And in those chapters, we have the fascinating story of a lady named Hannah. Hannah was a Jewish judge. She was a wife, and yet at the same time, she was barren. She was childless. And so at one point, she began praying and asking the Lord, say, God, I don't want just a child. I want a son. And so God heard her prayers. God answered her prayers, and soon enough, she conceived, and she was given a son. And so, as I think about what Hannah offered back to the Lord, I'm thinking about that in context of offering. She offered back to God her most prized treasure. She didn't offer back just money. She didn't offer just riches and treasures of those sorts. She offered the most prized possession that she had. She offered her son Samuel back to the Lord. This morning, as I think about that for just a moment, I think, what do I treasure the most? I know many of us, we treasure our money, right? Because it helps us have a little bit of an easier life. It helps pay the bills. It does so much, right? And so many of us, though, we also treasure our talents. We treasure our skills, our education, those things that we've worked so hard to master and to put together. Others of us, we have other things that we treasure. But I ask you this morning, what is it that you are offering to the Lord? For me, I offer my voice. I offer my time. I offer my time for studying and reading His Word. I offer my money as well. If this is your first time joining us, you by all means don't need to feel any pressure at all. But if you are one of our regulars, or if you're a part of our family, I would ask you to really consider, what is it that you offer back to the Lord? If you'd like to offer some tithes or offerings in the form of money, we'll have a link below for a PayPal link. Feel free to check that out and give those offerings in that manner. My Easter text this morning is found in the book of Luke. It's probably not really the most Eastery text this morning. It's probably one of the least likely passages somebody might expect to find or to be read at an Easter service. But for me, I can truly relate. Easter is not it's not a time of eating large ham suppers. It's not about finding hidden eggs out in the yard. Easter's not just about sitting on a lap of some large gargantuan purple rabbit. For me, Easter, though, is all about new opportunities and fresh starts. Let's look at Luke chapter 15 this morning. Luke 15, I'm going to read verses 1 through 7. Luke 15, 1 through 7. Tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. This made the Pharisees and the teachers of religious law complain that he was associating with such sinful people, even eating dinner with them. So Jesus told them this story. If a man has 100 sheep and one of them gets lost, what will he do? Won't he leave the 99 others in the wilderness and go and search for the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he will joyfully carry it home on his shoulders. And when he arrives, he will call together his friends and his neighbors, saying, "Rejoice with me, because I have found my lost sheep." In the same way, there is more joy in heaven over one lost sinner who repents and returns to God than over 99 others who are righteous and haven't strayed away. I like this passage because as a rancher, as a person who raises cattle, I can relate to this passage. I used to raise sheep. I used to raise goats too, but now I find that I have focused on raising healthy grass-fed beef. It's just something that I have enjoyed. I love my Black Angus cattle. I remember last summer, as I was going out checking the cattle, I found that one of our calves had gotten through the fence. And so as I checked on the situation a little bit further, I realized she was all alone. This little calf, she was gone. She was on the outside the safety of the fence. And so she was vulnerable to the coyotes. She was vulnerable to the dangers that abound all outside the fence. And so leaving the herd, I crossed over the fence and I went out to find the calf again. And I found her as she was in a panic mode right in the thicket of a large growth of poison ivy. I was really dreading to go in there, but what do? You have this calf who's out there. And of note, also, she was on the steep bank of the property that went down into the stream. If she would have fallen, who knows what would have happened, right? She could have broken her leg. She could have broke her neck. She could have drowned. Anything could have happened. So I found this little calf and I brought her back into the herd, back in relationship with its mother. The harbor, a safe refuge. As today is it's the final installment of our 3-part series. We are moving forward with this last installment, but if you want to go back and if you want to see what some of the other messages were in this series, I would encourage you to go and go out to our YouTube channel. Feel free to like it, subscribe to it, follow it, and you can see pretty much what we've covered to this point. The harbor is point number 1 is a place of refuge. The harbor is a place of refuge. I've covered this pretty good up to this point, but I want to recap it just a little bit. You see, in a storm, the harbor doesn't discriminate between young and old. It doesn't show preference to wealth over poor, over a rich vessel versus a poor vessel. It doesn't care if the vessel is black or white. It doesn't matter to the harbor what color it is. The harbor accepts all sorts of vessels. It has a place for each one. No matter the vessel's history, no matter how banged up or tattered it is, shipwrecked lives are welcome at the harbor. The harbor is a place of diversity and acceptance. Regardless of the storm that you find yourself in, whether it be a storm that you've survived or whether it's a storm that you're in right now, the harbor is a place that you can get out of the storm and find refuge. All are welcome at the harbor. You see, no matter what your status is, there is a place for you to find refuge. And though this next point doesn't really have a lot to do with chocolate bunnies or or marshmallow peeps. It's all about Jesus. You see, our ultimate harbor is Jesus. Our ultimate reason for Easter today is Jesus. The second point that I want to talk about today is the harbor is a place to refuel. We've all had those days, we've all had those seasons in life where we are just plumb wore out. Between work and relationships, between bills and responsibilities, between our mess ups or the mess ups that others inflict upon us, we just find that our tank is empty. When we're being pulled all these different directions, when we're giving out here, when we're putting out there, sometimes it just feels like we're bleeding out. And you know what? I understand that. I too find that I am giving out in every situation, every direction that I turn in. And so I understand that there is a need for an opportunity, for a place that somebody can go to get their tank filled back up, to have their batteries of life recharged. You see, we can only run on empty so long. We can only run on fumes so long. We need to be filled. Matthew 11:28-30 speaks of this in a sort of fashion. Matthew 11:28-30 says, "And then Jesus said, 'Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you,' Jesus says. 'Let me teach you, because I am humble and I am gentle at heart. You will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden that I give you is light.'" So Jesus is talking to some of John the Baptist's disciples. They were going through probably one of the most trying times of their life. They were feeling like they had emptied themselves out for no purpose, for no value whatsoever. And Jesus says, "Hey guys, hey all y'all, come to me. Come to me. Come see me. Let's talk. Come over here and be with me. Are you weary? Are you worn out? Come to me. Let me show you how to work. Let me show you the job that I have for you. Because the work that I have for you, it's not burdensome. It's not heavy. It's easy. You'll find rest when you come to me." He says, "I am humble. I am gentle." That's a side of Jesus that we just don't see very often. That Jesus is humble, he is gentle, and he gives rest. Jesus goes on in a manner of speaking and he says, "I tell you what, why don't you get away with me? Come to me. Let's go on vacation together, right? Doesn't that sound awesome? Get away with me and you'll recover your life." He says, "I'll show you how to find true rest. Walk with me, work with me. Watch how I do things. Keep company with me," Jesus says, and you'll learn how to live a free and light life. You see, when we are correctly embraced with Christ, we can all be refueled. All can find rest. So the first point that we talked about this morning was talking about titles and status, position. They don't matter at the harbor. And Jesus is he's actually said in his word, he says, he finds it easier to talk to somebody who is broken, those who are sick, than those who are healthy and whole. Point 2 was about the harbor. At the harbor, somebody doesn't need to feel like they have to be on top of the world. They don't have to feel like they're at the top of their game. in order to be at the harbor, right? Jesus says, hey, every day, any day that you feel down and out, any day that you feel empty, any day that you feel drained and wore out, come to me. Come to me and I'll give you rest. That is so encouraging. The third point that I want to talk about this morning is the harbor isn't some black hole. It's not a vacuum, if you will. And it's not really a parking lot for ships. It's not a parking lot for vessels. See, the harbor is really a place for relaunching. It's a place for relaunching. Mark 6:6-7 says, "And he, Jesus, was amazed at the people's unbelief. Then Jesus went from village to village, teaching the people. And he called his 12 disciples together and began sending them out 2 by 2, giving them authority to cast out evil spirits." So here we have Jesus. He's just absolutely amazed at the people's refusal to believe. And so he says, okay, I'll go back out again and I'll try to teach them again. So he goes out teaching them, going from village to village to village. And then he realizes something. He says, you know what? I've been pouring into this team, into my disciples, and I'm going to release them to go out. Right? So that's what he does. And so for a season, Jesus was pouring in. He was filling their tanks up, if you will. And so after a season of being filled up, of being given rest, a season of having their tanks filled, he releases them out to go do the same thing that he was doing. You know, Jesus, he pulled these people in off the streets, so to speak. His disciples is who I'm speaking of. Some of them, they were on the shore. They were fishermen, right? We know some of those guys. Others, they were thugs. They were down outright hoodlums. And he pulled them in and he says, hey, he says, follow me. And so he pulled these guys off the street. He poured into them. He gave them rest. He showed them a new way to think. He gave them a new life, if you will. And so after filling them up, after giving them an opportunity to have their tanks filled, he released them out into the world again to teach others about him. See, the harbor is the same way. Too many of us end up sitting on the landing pad and we never utilize our place as a launching pad. Do you know the difference between a landing pad and a launching pad? It's the direction of travel, right? It's the direction of travel. All too often we find ourselves parked right next to another vessel that's parked. That's right next to another vessel that's parked. And so all too often the harbor becomes this jam-packed full of vessels who are just sitting there floating in the water. Really no good to a whole lot of people. There's a time for that. That's the time for rehabilitating vessels. That's for the time for those that are broken, for healing them. It's the time for reprioritizing. It's a time for training. It's a time for refueling. There's a time for that. But Jesus was telling his disciples that day, he's like, you know, now's the time that I can launch you. I can send you back out into the world. See, the harbor has a purpose. The harbor has a purpose. It's not just to fill up, but rather it's so that we can be a refuge to the needy. The harbor has a purpose. There's a place there to be refueled, if you will, for those who are empty, those who are drained, those vessels who are deplete of anything. The harbor has a place for that person to be refilled, to refueled. And the harbor is a place that we can relaunch you back, strengthened and refreshed. filled with power like Jesus did. The fourth point, to this point in my message, actually in the series, we've really focused on the harbor through one perspective. This last point is going to be looking at the harbor through a slightly different perspective. I kind of touched on it in point number 3, but point number 4 is the harbor is a place for rescue workers. Let's look at Luke 22, verse 42. Luke 22, verse 42. And this is Jesus talking. He says, Father, if you are willing, please take this cup of suffering away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine. Jesus, on the night that he was betrayed, he was found in the Garden of Gethsemane, crying out to his Father, crying out to God. And he says, God, as much as I don't want to suffer in this way, as much as I don't want to endure the suffering that I know is about to happen, nevertheless, it's not what I want, but Lord, I want what you want. So the question is, what is it that God wants? What is God's will? John 3:16, it's a pretty familiar verse to many of us, even if we aren't saved, even if we aren't regular church attenders. A lot of us still know John 3:16, right? We see it on billboard signs, we see it on people's t-shirts, we see it on bumper stickers. And John 3:16 says, For God so loved the world that he gave us his only Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but will have everlasting life. God's will is that none should perish, right? And God's will is that it wasn't that Jesus was to suffer. That wasn't God's will. God's will was not that he didn't say, oh, I want Jesus to go to earth so he'll suffer. No. His will was so that all those who believe on Jesus won't have to suffer. His will was so that all those who believe in Jesus will have the opportunity to have everlasting life, that they won't perish. God's will wasn't that Jesus would suffer, but rather through him, whoever believes can have everlasting life. Recently, one of our church family members was talking to me, and they were asking me, they said, you know how some churches, before you walk out the doors, over the doors that you're walking out, sometimes some churches will have, you are entering the mission field, right? Have you ever seen that? I went to a church not too long ago that had that over the exiting doors. And so I responded in the affirmative that I had seen that. And they said, I think we should paint something more along the lines of entering the stormy seas. Entering the stormy seas. At first I was like, well, what does that have to do with anything? But then I started thinking about it, and I started loving that imagery. I started loving that because you know what? When we're in the church doors, when we're in the four walls of the church building, life isn't really that hard unless the Holy Spirit's stepping on our toes, right? But when we leave those doors, it seems like all of hell comes against us. It seems like as soon as we get in the car with our family, a bickering argument starts up, right? Even if it's as simple as where we want to go eat. Or as soon as we get home, something happens. Maybe it's a phone call happens, or maybe we get the notification that something bad happened, or maybe we just get into a fight with somebody, or we get into an argument with a loved one. You see, when we leave the church doors, we are entering the stormy seas. You see, when I started thinking about that, it helped me picture the purpose of the harbor. Because the harbor isn't just a place where anybody can come into. Sure, that's absolutely the truth. But it's also filled with lifeguards. It's filled with first responders and public servants, right? The harbor is full of those people who are supposed to be going out and bringing in those broken, tattered vessels. Those that go out and fight the fires. Those that climb through the wreckage of people's lives. Those who are protecting, those who are serving the hurting. Bringing them back into, like point number 1 pointed out, a place of refuge. You see, we don't go out and help other people because we're holier or we're better than them. No. We're going out and helping those who are struggling because we've been in their boat too. See, when I was stationed in North Dakota, I learned of a law that they have up there. I've since learned that it's in other places as well, but you see, in North Dakota, they have this law called the duty to rescue. And with winds and temperatures being as extreme and as hazardous as they are up there, if you're to be driving down the highway and you see somebody stranded alongside the road, it is your duty as a citizen to stop and rescue them. If you see somebody and you neglect to offer assistance to somebody, you can be held liable for their injury or even their death. A duty to rescue. And Jesus saw it to be his personal responsibility, his duty to rescue us, his duty to come down and step into our wreckage. We too have a duty to rescue. You see, it's our responsibility for those who have been in those situations before. Go out and find those who are hurting. Offer them an opportunity to be rescued. To offer them an opportunity to get out of their hazardous eternity. See, the harbor is a place that you're going to find refuge. The harbor is it's a place that you're going to be able to be refueled, right? The harbor is a place that you can have a fresh start, that you can be relaunched with a new life. The harbor is a place for rescue workers and first responders. Maybe you're thinking, this really hasn't been the most Eastery kind of sermon. We've not talked about chocolate crosses or chocolate bunnies. We've not talked about pink or yellow marshmallow peeps. We've not talked about the copious amounts of candy that kids take home from church when they're given Easter baskets. But what we have talked about today is Jesus. You see, Jesus is our ultimate harbor. He welcomes each and every one of us. Regardless of what we think of ourselves, he welcomes us. He invites us into his presence. He welcomes us into the harbor. It's a place of refuge. It's a place of being refueled. It's a place of fresh starts and being able to go back out with a new sense of purpose and life. It's a place where you can always come and find those willing to help. It's a place where there are those of us who have survived a thing or two, and we're able to help those who are in their mess. When Jesus died on the cross for us, it wasn't because he had nothing better to do. It wasn't because somebody forced him to. It wasn't even because the Roman guards nailed him to the cross. He says, don't you think that I could call down legions of angels to save me if I wanted to? He told his disciples. He says, I'm doing this because I want to. I'm doing this because I love you. I'm doing this because there's a better way than what you're in right now. I don't know about you, but sometimes in times past, I've contemplated life and I've thought, there just has to be something more. There's got to be something more than just this existence, this miserable life that I have. The ultimate harbor is Jesus. It's his harbor of grace and love. It's his harbor of forgiveness that gives life, that answers those questions about more. There's no other way to have life than through him. This Easter season, I'm talking to two basic groups this morning. I'm talking to those who are already at the harbor, those who are already a lifeguard, if you will, and those who are wanting to start or continue their journey to the harbor. You know, each journey starts with a step, right? And each journey is a series of steps. Right in the privacy of where you are. Maybe you're in your car watching this. Hopefully you're not driving. But maybe you're in the privacy of your room. Maybe you're in the privacy of your home watching this. But right where you're at today, if you'd like to take a next step, if you will, with God, I'd like to invite you to do two things with me. Two things. The first thing I'd like you to do is that if you have any questions about this message, or if you'd like me to be praying for you, or if you'd like to just ask me anything, or if you'd like some more direction for life, I would welcome you to email me. Email me at prayer@soulsharborassembly.org. It's prayer@soulsharborassembly.org. It's right below. And then the second thing I'd like you to do is I'd like you to text me. And that number is right above. Text me. And that number is 74574. Text the word journey. And that'll let me know that you're interested in the next step of this journey. Again, that number is 74574. And again, that's right above. So email me, text me, and I want to see if I can help facilitate this journey that you're on to find the harbor. You know, if someone were to ask me, hey, Pastor Jonathan, what is the harbor? With today's message in my mind and thinking of Jesus, I'd say the harbor is a world of new opportunities. The harbor represents worlds of rest. It represents a fresh start. The harbor is a place where you can find others wanting to help. The harbor is a safe place. It's a healing place for those who are hurting. The harbor is a starting place for a new life. The harbor is a place for so much more. You can find the more at the harbor. Jesus is that ultimate harbor. If you're looking for someone who accepts you where you're at, who loves you just the way you are. I would love to introduce you to my best friend, Jesus. He loves you just the way you are, exactly where you're at. Dear God, Lord, this Easter season, Lord, I know that there is only one way to have hope. There's only one way to have new life, and that's through Jesus. Lord, I know that I have sinned. I know, Lord, that I have not done things the way that you would desire me to do them. Lord, I'm sorry. Lord, I ask you, Lord, to forgive me of those things. Lord, I believe that you love me. I've read that in your word. I've heard it before. I believe, Lord, that you love me. I know that Jesus died for me on the cross. Lord, forgive me. Lord, I want you to come into my life, Lord. Lord, I want you, Lord, to come in and be my master. Lord, show me, Lord, areas in my life that I've not yet yielded to you. I want to be all yours. I love you, God. It's in Jesus' name I pray. If you just prayed that prayer with me, or if you want to rewind and go back and pray that prayer with me, I want to welcome you, because that's the first step in the journey to the harbor. The first step to knowing that ultimate harbor, Jesus. Like I asked you before, if you're interested, or if you have questions, or you need some prayer, do me a favor, email me at prayer@soulsharbораssembly.org, and then text me at 74574. Text me the word journey, and I'd love to send you some resources, some tools to help you take that next step with the Lord.
Lord, have your way. Looking just how far we've come, knowing that for every step you were with us. Kneeling on this battleground, seeing just how much you've done, knowing every victory is your power in us. Scars and struggles on the way, but with joy our hearts can sing. Yes, our hearts can sing. Never once did we ever walk alone. Never once did you leave us on our own. You are faithful, God, you are faithful. Kneeling on this battleground, seeing just how much you've done, knowing every victory is your power in us. Scars and struggles on the way, but with joy our hearts can sing. Yes, our hearts can sing. Never once did we ever walk alone. Never once did you leave You are faithful, God. You are faithful.
This morning, as we are concluding our three-part series called The Harbor, I want to say thank you to Devin Williams, and I want to invite each of you to check out his website. It's devinw.com. I appreciate him. I appreciate Amanda, his wife, who have come together and have helped facilitate our connection with God. Thank you, Devin. Be blessed.
Thank you once again for joining us for our online celebration service with Souls Harbor Assembly located in Bardstown, Kentucky. We're excited that you joined us, and we would love to hear from you. If you have a prayer or praise report, or if you want to find out more about what it means to follow Christ, please feel free to email us at prayer@soulsharborassembly.org. You can join us on Facebook Live every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and every Wednesday evening at 6:30 p.m. for our Community on the Go with Pastor Jonathan Watson. If you'd like to connect with us on social media, you can like us on Facebook at Souls Harbor Assembly. You can also find us on Instagram at Souls Harbor Assembly. You can find us on Twitter at Souls Harbor AG. Souls Harbor Assembly, real people, real life, real faith, real God.